All right, now that we have the building blocks in place in order to send data over to the ActiveCampaign API via our proxy, we actually need to make this useful to our tracking deployment, and therefore we need to know who the user is who is currently on our website so we can send it over to the right ActiveCampaign profile. And for that, we'll use a little bit of a cookie technique here in order to remember the user and then send it over to the right account later on. So let's set this up inside of Google Tag Manager.
Alright, in this last video we are going to take a look at how to identify a user, because we want to change around how the user is identified. Right here in our tag, we just send it to the user number 2 inside of ActiveCampaign, or with the ActiveCampaign contact ID of number 2. But we actually want to be dynamic here, because when the user comes to the website, we want to identify him, know who the user is and which profile he belongs to, and then send the ActiveCampaign data to the right profile. So how would we make this dynamic? And there are different methods of doing so, but one that I prefer, or I think is the smartest way, and also would reflect most of the use cases out there, is to identify an email. Since ActiveCampaign is an email tool, you send out an email to a user, and once he comes to your newsletter and clicks a link here, we can encode the information of where we should send the information later on, the ActiveCampaign information, to which ID. So we have here the ID number 4, and I just encoded this into this query string. A query string is everything behind this question mark right here. So ACID equals 4. And this is the information that we would then need to actually fill into this field and then send it to the right user. Now you might be asking yourself, how would I be able to send information like this from ActiveCampaign? Obviously there are different ways to send information or send emails in ActiveCampaign. You can use the campaigns, you can use automations, but one for demonstration's sake right here, I'm just going to choose to send an email directly from the profile itself. So we have here information that we can send, or can send an email to the user, and we can send personalized information based on whatever is in the user's profile. So if I press the percentage sign, I get this little menu, and I can say first name, for example, and that will then be replaced with whatever the first name of this profile is. And I can say, okay, John, and then I could say, here is a link, right? This is just simply a link. And in that link, I'm going to create a link. And in that link, I'm going to send the user to demoshop.measure.school. But I'm also going to put in a query string. And in this case, our ACID. You can choose whatever key you want, but it needs to be separated with the equal sign and then your value. And now the value would be something we want to send out dynamically based on whose profile we are sending this on. So we can use again these percentage signs, and we can enter contact ID, and that should then be dynamically replaced to create a link like this. Now you might know inside of the tag template we have different user identification methods. We can also use the email address or the user hash. So if you want to use the user hash, for example, you would be, instead of contact ID, using subscriber hash _hash. So that would be it. So this would need to be in the link itself, but you could also use email, which would print out the email address. Now, I wouldn't recommend email just for PII reasons. It's a little bit harder to handle, but definitely something you could still use if you are careful with it. But in our case, I'm just going to go with contact ID. It's easier to handle, and we can see it more clearly in the profile. So contact ID is where it's at. We are going to click OK here, and this is now encoded in the link. So let me send out this test email, and this is how you would then send out this test email to the user. Hopefully it arrives. Here we have a link, and that would lead us exactly to the place, and it would be replacing the ActiveCampaign ID exactly with the ActiveCampaign ID that we also have in the user's profile. So that would then be dynamic. Now, how would you be able to take that ActiveCampaign ID and put it into our tag template? Well, for that, we can create a variable. So let's go over to variables here and go on new. And then of the type, we'll choose the URL variable. where we're going to look into the query string. And the query key that we have chosen, or I have chosen, is ACID. You could use something else. And I'm just going to give this a name, URL ACID. Let's save this and preview. Now I've entered here already a link. Does this connect? Yes, it connects with the ACID number 3 right here. And that should now be in our variable as well. So if I go to the variables, we see here that the URL ACID is 3. The unfortunate thing is now that when I go to the next page where I would, for example, add to cart right here, the URL is gone. And therefore, our URL ACID would be undefined. So we can't really use this inside of our tag because it would be gone right away. So what would we do? Well, in Google Tag Manager, we can remember data through something called cookies. And cookies are probably something you know from tracking. They're something that is installed on the browser, and no matter which page I go to, I should have the ability to carry that cookie around with us and read it as long as we are on our website. So how would we create a cookie? We can do this also with Google Tag Manager, and there are actually some handy templates in the community gallery. So I'm going to go to here to configuration, community gallery, and enter the keyword cookies. And here we have different solutions. Not all of them can actually create cookies. I tried out this custom cookie tag already, and I think it's the right fit. So I'm going to add this to our workspace. And then we have this custom tag in here, which we can use to add cookie with our ACID. Now the cookie name cannot be changed, so it's custom cookie. You could also change it whatever you want. So we could for example take our custom cookie number 7, then an optional description. We don't really have to fill this out, and then the cookie value would be something that you want to write into the cookie. Now in our case, I want to write our URL ACID in here once it's available in the URL. And I want to write this at the moment when it's actually available in the URL. So I'm going to create a trigger that fires on page view when our URL ACID does not equal undefined. So when it's actually filled and it's in the URL, then I want to fire my tag and set it so it takes that value and puts it into a cookie. So let me say page view and say ACID is in URL. Let's save this, and now we can try this out. So we go over to preview, and now in this instance the ACID is already in the URL. It's number 3, so we should be able now to open up the developer tool. So you can do this in several ways. I'm just going to go here to right click, no, this was wrong, right click and then inspect element. And then here under application, we can go to the left side and go to cookies right here under your domain. And then it will give you a list of all the cookies that are set on your browser. And we should have different kind of cookies. And one of them is the custom cookie number 7. And it has the value number 3. So it pulls it out from the URL and puts it into the cookie. And anytime we change the page, that should still be there, although it's not in the URL. So where's our custom cookie? Here we go. Custom cookie is number here. So now we need to again pull this out of the cookie in order to use it in our tag. So how would we do that? In Google Tag Manager, we can create another variable, and this time of the type first party cookie variable. So I'm going to go here to new configuration, and I'm going to use first party cookie variable. So here I'm going to put in the name of our cookie. In our case, it was custom cookie number 7. And I'm going to put this in here. So this is our cookie, custom cookie number 7. Let's save this and go over to our tags. And now we're going to implement this inside of our ActiveCampaign as a custom cookie number 7. So let's save this and preview again. I'm actually going to delete this cookie for a second here. So we can delete cookies. and I'm going to reload the page. So here's the ACID number 3 is in there. So what should happen now is that our add cookie has fired. It puts it from our URL into the cookie. And then when we go to the next page here and click on add cart, we should fire our tag when we clicked on it right here. And it should send it to the contact number 3. So let's check that out inside of ActiveCampaign. Let me see. This one is the number 3. No, it didn't arrive yet. Okay, it's sent it off to our contact ID number 3. So it should have recorded here. Not sure why it's not. Let me try this again. So I'm going to reload. Click on add to cart. That should have sent our cookie. That should have sent our to ActiveCampaign number 3. And here. Yeah, this time it worked for some reason. So here we get our click and then the page that we were on. So this is now correctly installed and it's actually being carried around. So you could go to another page here with that same user ID in mind, and the user would still be identified unless he deletes his cookies or goes to another browser or changes devices. Obviously, that cookie wouldn't be present anymore. But I think that's the best way to actually identify the user. Unfortunately, what you will need to do is any links that point actually to your domain that need to have that query string on it. So it's like a habit that you would need to build inside of the team to tell them, okay, please put ACID in every link that points to our website so we can effectively identify the user. Unfortunately, there's no way to do this through the site tracking that ActiveCampaign has, for example. Okay, now one extra, maybe just to make sure what happens actually when the user is not identified, so he doesn't have an ACID in the URL. We obviously don't want to fire off our ActiveCampaign because the user is not identified. So what we can do is also build a negative trigger or a blocking trigger so our ActiveCampaign doesn't get fired. And we can do this by simply creating a custom event trigger that reacts on every event, and we're going to use regex matching option here, and then some events where the cookie custom number 7 equals undefined, so it's not filled with any information, and I'm going to call this custom and ACID undefined. So this might seem a little bit counterintuitive, so when this is equals undefined, but we actually want to turn this trigger true once this condition is true, and then we can actually attach it to our event as a trigger exception. So that way, when the user is not identified or the cookie is not present, it will not fire our tag. So we can try this out. Well, now we are identified automatically. I'm going to go over here into another URL and also delete my cookies, at least this cookie number 7 here. So let's delete this one. And now if I go to a product, we should be undefined, and I add this to cart. And now under the click, we see that our event didn't fire because our blocking trigger turned true, and therefore it blocked our tag, and we don't send redundant requests to our endpoint here. Okay, so this is how you can install this. I will actually now make a download of this container and upload it to the GitHub repository as well. So you will find this here. It's not in here yet. And if you don't want to go through the whole setup steps, you can just go to admin section here and then import container. And then we will have your container download ready here for you to upload. but you might need to adjust this a little bit. Obviously, if you want to send out more events, you would do so as well, and always add your event trigger and also your custom exceptions here. Don't forget, if you want to take this live, then you obviously need to submit this as a version.
All right, this was all of the setup, pretty long here, but once you have it set up, it should work and you should be able to send information, event tracking information into ActiveCampaign. Let me know if you run into any problems, leave me a comment down below. And if you like this video, please give us a thumbs up so we get some algorithm love. And also check out one of our other videos right over there. And yeah, my name is Julian. See you in the next one.